All right, man, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy Key coming at y'all boys with a brand new video, and today I've been requesting some of these, man. I did a couple, but we finna do some more, man. Tales of Toronto, the untold story of Chunky. And I ain't gonna cap, bro. We got a lot of people that we think, you know what I'm saying, is crazy in the United States, bro. We got the King Bonds, the this, that, and the thirds, bro. But some of these other niggas, bro, be out here wilding. So with that being said, bro, we're gonna get into this story on Chunky. I keep trying to call him Chucky for some reason. Chunky, man, let's do it.
These are the 5 men police say are responsible for kidnapping a Newtonbrook secondary. These are the 5 men police say are responsible for kidnapping a Newtonbrook secondary student in early March.
They arrested 6 people. 1 is under 18 and cannot be identified. All have been charged with first-degree murder.
A street gang on the brink of extinction.
That's what Toronto police hope is the case with the Dixon Bloods.
They are identified as Liban Hussein, alias of Chunky.
I got me trust issues, keep the heat in my sweater. Bitch, I'm grinding in the winter, summer shining with that cheddar. I shoot, cash, flu, yeah, I feel under the weather. Got the sauce, ragu, now they know who really better. Look at me just like I you that.
Nah, bro.
Got the West End and they knew that.
This is Liban Hussein, better known by his street name, Chunky. He's a reputable member of Toronto's notorious Dixon City Bloods with a lengthy criminal history.
Dixon, I think they ops to Pressa, am I wrong? Pressa Armani and
being involved in high-profile kidnappings to getting swept up in a raid at 18, Chunky's story is a chaotic one. But how did his journey into a life of crime begin? It all begins in the west side of Toronto, on the corner of Dixon Road and Kipling Avenue, where a cluster of high-rises lay. The area, nicknamed Dixon City, is essentially the Little Somalia of Toronto. In the late 1980s, thousands of Somalis, seeking to escape the abysmal conditions of war-torn Somalia, jumped ship and landed in Toronto, congregating in the apartment complexes located on Dixon Road and Kipling Avenue. This included Chunky and his family. The reason they ended up on Dixon Road was because in 1988, Transport Canada decided to allow passenger aircraft to fly over the Kingsview area. Air traffic over the area increased drastically. Upset, disgruntled, and downright pissed off middle-class residents of the area moved away. The mass exodus resulted in lots of vacant homes and apartments and sent property values plummeting to the bottom of the barrel. Arriving Somalis took up residence in the area for 2 reasons. 1, the cost of housing was cheap, and 2, it was close to Pearson Airport, which meant they didn't have far to go after they cleared customs and immigration.
I ain't gonna lie though. Damn,
meanwhile, during the 1990s, Crip sets began popping up in...
One thing that I have learned, bro, is that I ain't gonna say that, bro.
Toronto, laying claim to neighborhoods all over the city. True to their nature, the Crips banged with local street gangs, pushing them out of their territories. The Crips wanted to control the drug scene, so the local gangs were forced to either align with the Crips or fight back. Most chose the latter, and to make a statement, the local gangs took up the color red, repping the Bloods. This is when the Dixon City Bloods came into play. Unconfirmed rumors state that one of the founding members of the Dixon Bloods was a former member of a New York-based gang known as the G-Shine Bloods, who had relocated to Dixon City in the early 2000s. Young Somali immigrants quickly picked up on the pecking order, and since violence was nothing new to them, they excelled in the streets. The Dixon Bloods maintained low profiles and were extremely mobile, often moving as a group from city to city. They focused on easy money, operating on a commodity-based system, selling drugs and guns to anyone who wanted to buy, including the then mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford.
There has been a serious accusation from the Toronto Star that I use crack cocaine. I do not use crack cocaine, nor am I an addict of crack cocaine. Can you get off my driveway, please? Can you get off my driveway? Can you get off my property, please?
We are now in possession of a recovered digital video file relevant to the investigations that have been conducted.
I now look forward to Rob Ford interviews the way children look forward to Christmas morning. It's
the best excuse I heard you give for using that crack cocaine was I was in a drunken stupor. And I'm wondering, is that supposed to make anybody feel better?
No, not at all. All he told me was it's not only your unit, it's the whole building, and this is happening because of Rob Ford.
The mayor of Toronto came forward today to admit he smoked crack cocaine.
In February of 2013, Dixon City Blood member Mohammed Syed was at a bungalow adjacent to the Dixon Towers. The occasion was a social get-together of fellow Bloods, but Mayor Rob Ford was the star of the night. The mayor was there in the bungalow partying with the Bloods, and during the festivities, Mohammed recorded a video of the late mayor smoking crack cocaine. Mohammed, alongside Libin Syed, another noted Dixon Blood, decided to sell the video, hoping to make some easy money. He contacted various media outlets, saying that he had a shocking video that would expose the truth about Toronto's public officials, specifically the mayor. Media network, The Gawker, naturally tried to buy it, putting together $200,000 to purchase it, but the transaction never took place. Unsurprisingly, rumors of the video leaked. When asked point blank about it, Mayor Ford denied it, as did his public relations people, but the rumors kept circulating and the public began screaming for an investigation. Under heavy scrutiny, Toronto police launched Project Brazen 2, which was charged with investigating the mayor and his close friend Alessandro Lisi, who was accused of purchasing drugs for the mayor and extorting Mohammed and Libin in an attempt to recover the infamous crack video. Project Brazen 2 allowed for wiretaps to be placed on 11 associates of Mohammed Syed, all of whom had ties to the Dixon City Bloods. The data obtained from them was immense, and it marked the beginning of what came to be known as Project Traveler, a mass raid targeting the Dixon City Bloods.
The alleged offenders have been charged with approximately 300 assorted serious offenses, including participating in a criminal organization.
That organization, police say, is the Dixon Bloods, based in this northwest Toronto neighborhood. It's stretched all the way to Windsor. Police moved in early yesterday morning in both cities after more than a year of investigating. 28 men and women were arrested. More arrests, they say, are still to come.
The crime situation and the potential for violence has not been completely eradicated.
Yesterday, everyone was brought to this courthouse, including some familiar faces. Two of the men in this now infamous photo were charged. A judge has already said one of them, 19-year-old Mohammed Katak, is not getting bail.
I can't talk about what my clients told me, and the Crown hasn't given me any information about the connection with Rob Ford.
Police are also refusing to confirm or deny a link. Again today, the chief said it will all come out in court.
Would you acknowledge that there's a relationship between the mayor and the individuals in that photo?
Again, if I was to do that, I would be violating the law, and also I would be placing in jeopardy the important work that we're doing.
Some of the suspects, many who lived in this neighborhood with their parents, are facing drug, trafficking, and firearms charges. Others are up for attempted murder and murder. It's in the death of this man, Anthony Smith, one more person who, at one time, got close to the mayor.
Project Traveler jumped off in the morning on June 13, 2013. Hundreds of heavily armed police officers from 42 tactical teams and 17 different law enforcement agencies converged on Dixon City. 14 apartment doors splintered under the force of battering rams. Officers quickly cleared the rooms of each apartment and restrained the occupants. They searched the apartments for drugs, guns, cash, phones, and computers. Everything was tagged and bagged. While Dixon City was being raided, dozens of homes in Windsor, along with one home in Edmonton, succumbed to the same treatment. Overall, 60 Dixon City Bloods were arrested, including Libin, Mohammed, and Chunky, who was just an 18-year-old college student at the time. Combined, Project Traveler revealed $3 million worth of drugs, $572,000 in cash, 40 weapons, and the oh-so-elusive Rob Ford crack video. Chunky and the Dixon Bloods took a major hit in 2013, but unsurprisingly, the crew didn't falter. 2 years after the mass takedown, they were back in the news, this time for homicide.
It is alleged that they are all members of the Dixon Road Bloods and their associates.
Heavily armed tactical units stormed 3 buildings on Dixon Road near Kipling. They arrested 6 people. One is under 18 and cannot be identified. All have been charged with first-degree murder.
On March 17, 2015, at a building sitting on 2063 Islington Avenue, gunshots rang out at around 3:15 p.m. in the underground parking garage. Ahmed Syed, the brother of the man who tried to sell the infamous Rob Ford video, was hit. Fortunately, he survived. Coincidentally, Rob Ford was at the building when the gunfire rang out. He spoke to the Toronto Sun about the incident, adding that he witnessed Ahmed wounded. Like his older brother, Ahmed was a member of the Dixon Bloods, and when they heard one of their own was shot, they weren't happy. They began enacting a plan of revenge, which they carried out 5 hours later. They gathered 6 members, one of them being Chunky, and went back to 2063 Islington Avenue to confront Malcolm Marfo, a man who they suspected was involved in the shooting of Ahmed. The confrontation quickly escalated, with one of the Dixon Bloods pulling out a gun. Malcolm tried to get a hold of the weapon, but amidst the struggle, he was shot fatally. All 6 Dixon members then fled the scene. Shortly after clearing the first shooting, Toronto police returned back to 2063 Islington Avenue at 8:15 p.m. for reports of gunfire. When officers arrived, they found 22-year-old Malcolm Marfo dead in a hallway. With the knowledge of the first shooting and who the victim was, it didn't take long for Toronto police to realize this was a gang-related altercation involving the Dixon City Bloods. They began collecting footage from around the apartment building and were able to identify multiple people who they believed were involved in the murder of Malcolm. 1 month later, on April 2, 2015, with help from the Emergency Task Force, TAVIS, and 23 division officers, the homicide squad executed 8 search warrants in Dixon City. Chunky, Mohammed Omar, Said Haji, Sharmark Farah, Ali Mohammed Issi, and a minor were arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They spent a year in custody until 5 of them had their charges withdrawn after one of the men, Said Haji, took the fall by pleading guilty to manslaughter. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison.
One person gets 9 years, everybody
By now, most of you are probably thinking Chunky is one lucky guy. So far, he's gotten off on the charges from the raid.
Bro, 1 person out of 6 got 9 years.
Now, a murder charge. Well, you're right, and his luck will continue 2 years later when he got caught up in another shooting involving the same people. On April 23, 2017, at around 6 p.m., cameras caught Chunky, Ahmed Syed, and another man arriving to the parking lot of a complex on 1811 Martin Grove Road in a red SUV. Several other men who were already in the parking lot proceed to approach the parked vehicle. Ahmed Syed exits the SUV and puts his arm around a man wearing a gray hoodie as the pair walk across the parking lot together. In Toronto, when a man puts his arm around you in such a fashion, it only means one thing: he's about to rob you. Anticipating that was about to happen, the man in the gray hoodie beats Ahmed to the draw, pulling a handgun from his pants and firing at least 8 times. Ahmed was hit multiple times in the lower extremities, but survived. Chunky can be seen grabbing the gun from Ahmed, helping him back into the SUV, and driving off. Toronto police found Ahmed 20 minutes later dumped in an underground parking garage at 345 Dixon Road. Ahmed, who faces charges for the gun battle, was also wanted at the time for another shooting that occurred in February of that year at 320 Dixon Road. While Ahmed was in custody, Chunky went on the run. He ended up in Oakville, Ontario, where he was found by Toronto police in October. According to investigators, they were investigating the murder of Abdul Qadir Bihi, a 29-year-old man who was fatally shot outside a complex on Dixon Road earlier in the week. During the investigation, they executed a raid on an Oakville condominium hoping to find 2 suspects in the murder. Instead, they found $27,663 in Canadian currency, drugs, 2 firearms, ammunition, and magazines. Chunky and 2 brothers were also found in the residence. They were hit with a list of charges relating to weapons, drugs, and possessing
13 charges because of the 2 X's.
Proceeds of crime over $5,000. It appears Chunky spent no more than 3 years in custody before he was released, because he was back in the news by 2020. This time around, he would be involved in one of the most publicized kidnapping cases in Canadian history.
These are the 5 men police say are responsible for kidnapping a Newtonbrook secondary student in early March, triggering an Amber Alert and nearly 40 hours of terror for the teen.
Olalekan Asakoya worked as a drug and firearms courier for a mid-level Toronto drug dealer by the name of Scott McManus for $10,000 a month starting in the summer of 2018. Asakoya, upset because he wasn't paid on time, or not at all by McManus, conspired with another drug courier to steal a drug shipment last summer. Asakoya obtained 90 kilograms of cocaine in London, Ontario, equaling nearly $4 million, but when he met his accomplice, he was robbed at gunpoint of 75 kilograms of the haul. Asakoya fled with only 15 kilograms of cocaine and went into hiding, but McManus believed he stole the entire amount. McManus, who is in the middle of the criminal organization's hierarchy, was responsible for the cost of the stolen stash. The disgruntled dealer visited Asakoya's parents' home, hunting for him, and later dispatched henchmen to break into Asakoya's and his girlfriend's homes. Later, Asakoya discovered that McManus put a $400,000 bounty on his head. That plan.
If you put a bounty on his head for $400,000 and somebody completes the bounty, yeah, he's dead, but you still in the hole $4.4 million.
As well. McManus then devised a plot to kidnap Asakoya's 14-year-old brother to force the drug thief to return the shipment and save his sibling. In the morning of March 3, 2020, the kidnapping plot went into action. 5 men, Scott McManus, Samir Abdelgader, Hamed Shanawaz, Suleiman Nassimi, and Chunky, used 3 vehicles, a stolen black Jeep Wrangler, a Mercedes, and a Chevy Tahoe to execute the abduction. Just before 8:30 a.m., the 5 men located Asakoya's brother, 14-year-old Shama Joleami, in the Driftwood Avenue and Finch Avenue West area walking towards Newtonbrook Secondary School where he was enrolled. They pulled up beside him and dragged him into the Jeep Wrangler. After receiving calls from the public who reported hearing Shama yell for help as he was being dragged into the vehicle, officers from 31 Division immediately acted by launching an investigation. With the lack of information at the time, officers were unable to locate the suspect vehicles, which made their way to a barn in Brampton, Ontario. In the meantime, officers managed to connect the 911 calls they received in the morning to the abduction of Shama, after his parents contacted them 9 hours after the kidnapping when he didn't show up home after school. His parents should have been notified by his school of his absence by 11 a.m., but his teachers did not input attendance data correctly. Toronto District School Board suspended 5 teachers for the screw-up. Things quickly escalated when Asakoya was called by his kidnapped brother on Snapchat. He was blindfolded, naked, and in the background were his kidnappers. Asakoya was warned by the kidnappers he'd better return what he'd stolen or his brother would die. Before fleeing the province, Asakoya broke the news to his father, who contacted police again. Understanding the severity of the situation, Toronto police took a unique step by having Steve Watts, the head of their organized crime unit, step in front of news cameras to make a plea directly to the kidnappers. I appreciate high-level cocaine business, the situation that faces them, but he's a 14-year-old innocent child. He is not a part of that business, not a part of that lifestyle. We would encourage those who took Shama to drop him off in a safe place, Watts said. 24 hours later, officers finally got a break in the case. The black Jeep Shama was forced into was traced by police through a combination of surveillance video, CCTV, and highway transponder readings. It was located at 10 p.m., burning at Forks of the Credit Provincial Park in Caledon, Ontario. Soon after, police obtained emergency wiretaps which traced communications between the kidnappers and the family of Shama. This helped officers pinpoint the 14-year-old's location to the barn house in Brampton. Nearly 40 hours after his abduction, at 10:20 p.m., Shama was found safe in the abandoned barn. He was alone and in a disheveled state, freezing cold, wearing construction clothes. Shama was given medical attention and reunited with his family later that night. The entire family were then relocated from their home in Driftwood to a safe new location. Now that Shama was located, police shifted their focus on his kidnappers. Over the course of the next 2 months, they obtained vital information from Asakoya, who they managed to get in contact with. He not only provided investigators with a videotaped statement, but he also pointed out one of the kidnappers, Samir Abdelgader. Asakoya allegedly used to make deliveries to Samir, who worked as muscle for the organization. With the info, officers executed several search warrants across the city on May 12, 2020. The warrants saw the arrests of 5 men, including Chunky, Scott McManus, and Samir, plus the seizure of 1 kilogram of cocaine, 70 pounds of marijuana, more than $100,000 in cash and body armor. Chunky and his co-accused were hit with a list of charges ranging from kidnapping to arson. And just like that, the near 2-day kidnapping ordeal was over, but Chunky's trouble in the streets of Toronto was just beginning.
Police say this was an intricate investigation that took nearly 2 years and led to more than 200 charges. And police say this includes discovering another criminal network that were allegedly conspiring to commit murder.
Project Cairns was created in July 2018 when the Contraband Tobacco Enforcement Team began an investigation into the trafficking of tobacco from a manufacturing facility located on Six Nations Mohawk territory. The facility, run by a small organized crime group based in the Greater Toronto Area, was producing upwards of 10,000 contraband cigarettes a minute. In addition to the production and trafficking of contraband tobacco, the team uncovered drug trafficking networks that were responsible for large shipments of illicit cannabis occurring on a weekly basis from British Columbia to Ontario. The project was carried out on June 1st, 2020, and it involved investigators executing 13 search warrants in several locations throughout Canada, including Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec. The warrants netted 16 arrests and saw 11.5 million BC-bound cigarettes yanked from the black market. The June bust
plus 2.5 million, so you had like 3.45 million.
Also scored over 1,000 kilos of cannabis, 1.14 kilos of cocaine, 1.3 kilograms of fentanyl, and over $235,000 in cash. In addition to the contraband charges, 7 out of the 16 accused were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. This included Chunky and his former kidnapping conspirator, Hamid.
Before he it gets locked up for real. Like at this point, bro, if you want to commit a murder and get away with it and just walk, bro, go to Canada.
Was. Despite the severity of the charges, less than 2 weeks after their arrest, the kidnapping duo were released on bail, along with the rest of the accused in Project Cairns. Considering Chunky's extensive criminal history, you would think Canada's criminal justice system would have had enough of his antics by now. Despite being a repeat offender whose face has been blasted on the news year after year, he's been able to either walk away scot-free or with just a slap on the wrist. And it didn't take long for the streets to catch on to the pattern. Sometime in 2022, paperwork surfaced showing Chunky testifying in the trial of Yahya Jama and Zaid Chaudhry, 2 noted Dixon Bloods. The duo were arrested back in 2017 in relation to the murder of 29-year-old Abdul Qadir Bihi, a newlywed expectant father. As previously mentioned, Chunky was arrested in a raid, which was meant to find Jama and Chaudhry, but instead, officers found Chunky, a large quantity of drugs, guns, and money. During his testimony, Chunky was questioned about a video prosecutors believed he was in. Instead of confirming or denying the allegations, he named Jama as a person of interest. He was quoted saying, "That could clearly be a lot of people. That could be Yahya Jama. If you're saying that's me, that's not me." These documents have never been confirmed to be legitimate, but that didn't matter to his ops, who mocked him relentlessly on social media for pointing out a fellow Dixon Blood in a murder trial. Regardless, the snitching accusations didn't seem to faze him or his associates, as he was seen months later at Mustafa the Poet's birthday party hanging with the likes of Doovie, Puffy Ells, and even Drake.
Ooh, I forgot
Chunky was living it up, and
Chunks.
with his last arrest being in
Chunky,
2020, he appeared to be staying out of trouble, but that doesn't mean the work he put into the streets was left forgotten. You see, when you end up in the deep end of the streets, your life will only end up 2 ways, either in jail or dead. For Chunky, it was the latter.
A police flatbed truck tows a bullet-riddled white Chrysler 300 from the front driveway of 2 Eva Road, a condominium complex just off Highway 427 north of Bloor Street, where families live. Detectives have yet to identify the victim, but Global News has learned he was in his late 20s, had spent time in jail on gun and drug charges, and was believed to be a member of a West End street gang. So far, no arrests have been made.
On Thursday, March 7th, 2024, at about 8:30 p.m., Toronto police were called to a condominium in the area of West Mall and Eva Road for a shooting. When officers arrived, they found Chunky suffering from gunshot wounds. According to police, multiple suspects approached him and shot him several times while he was sitting in his car in the parking lot of the condo. He was taken to hospital, where he later died. The 29-year-old Dixon Blood was Toronto's 13th homicide victim of 2024. As blunt as it may sound, Chunky's criminal career went longer than it should have. It lasted 11 years, and throughout that time, he created a lot of enemies, with some even from his own block. Shortly after Chunky's death was announced, a few of those enemies had a field day on social media. Some called him a rat, while others put him in a blunt, calling it a chunky pack.
That shit that you put in the freezer. I'm super hot, that shit you put in the freezer.
Judging by these reactions, it's clear Chunky was putting in serious work into the streets. Unfortunately, he was too far gone to change his ways.
Hold on. As making this video, no suspect have identified in the murder of Chunky, and his death is still unsolved. Yeah, when you're a guy like Chunky, the police don't have no incentive to find your murderer. You feel me? Like, they better off just letting that nigga go wild and somebody else catch him and kill him. You feel me? Two birds, one stone. But with that being said, man, it's true. You live a life like Chunky, you're never gonna make it out. I thought he was gonna end with a life sentence, all the cases he was catching, but he just kept getting out of jail from what they say he was snitching. You feel me? So with that being said, man, make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. Get in that comment box, tell me how you felt about this video. With that being said, man, it's your boy Key checking in, checking out. I'm gone.